I am a man. Just trying to crack a cold one open with the boys, if you know what I mean.
Hi, my name is Sydney, welcome back to hell. And as per usual, before we launch in, today's video is sponsored by established titles. And I just want to note as well that the reason I haven't posted for a month is because I actually flew home to Australia to surprise my parents. Those of you who've been around for a little while, you'll know that I hadn't seen my parents and my family for 3 years up until very recently, and it was really great to get home. I saw friends, I did all the Australian stuff that I would be doing if I still lived in Australia. But I am back now, I am back in Texas, so I will be posting again as per usual, and yeah, back to the video. Now, the conversation around gender and sex and presentation has gotten a little, shall we say, complicated over the last number of years. So much so that we presently live in a time where if you're not an all-out hyper-feminine girly girl, so to speak, then people assume that you're something else. Which is obviously extremely helpful. You can probably already tell the kind of people that are gonna pop up in this video. Sorry in advance. Let's think about the children of some choice celebrities just for a moment. Not like that though, that's weird. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt's child, Shiloh, wanted to be called John and dressed masculine for most of her childhood, or at least what we could see of it. People assumed that the child was transgender, and lo and behold, some years later, the child's grown up and she is a girl. She wants to be a girl. She looks like a girl. There you go. Last year, images of J-Lo's daughter began circulating where she's wearing baggy clothes, has short dyed hair, and looks pretty stereotypically boyish. People immediately made the assumption that she was either trans or non-binary, and randomly started using gender-neutral pronouns for her. And this was a full year before she decided to come out as a they-them. Because like I said, if you're not a girly girl, then you're something else entirely.
You're a weirdo.
Anyway, I've personally made my own comments about this issue over the last year or so. Last November, I tweeted a photo where I'm obviously wearing a lot of makeup and a backwards cap and essentially said, remember the time when you could be a tomboy without injecting yourself with hormones? And yeah, I mean, it obviously got the expected response. It got screenshot, posted on Reddit. I got called a transphobe. Back when I was growing up, if I saw a woman or a girl dressed in the same way as Angelina Jolie or J-Lo's daughters, I'd have assumed they were either tomboys or just shirking female fashion. Today, the assumption is something else entirely, that if you aren't heavily participating in feminine female stereotypes, then you probably aren't a female. And at least in my opinion, that's a problem. Not just for society on the whole, but for the women and girls who are being conditioned to think that their non-feminine interests mean that something is wrong with them. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The death of the tomboy. But before you once again board my hell gondola, and together we take yet another journey down into the depths of weirdness and depravity, let's hear from today's sponsor, Established Titles. Sydney, what? Because we are currently in Australia, I don't have my established title certificate showing that I am a lady, and I'm gonna have to draw it. Draw what? The certificate. But you're so bad at art. I'm so bad at art. Okay, well, draw the individual plot of land and number that you get when you sign up. And draw the Scottish woodlands that you'll save because Established Titles plants a tree for every order placed. I'm not Bob Ross. I'll draw one tree. Okay, whatever, one tree. Then tell everybody that the next 200 people who sign up and purchase a title pack using our link will effectively be next to our plot, like within a few minutes walking distance. The Siddom. The Siddom. Okay, it's finished. Let's just use some B-roll. Get yourself this fancy certificate by becoming a lord or lady with established titles, which is based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners refer to themselves as lairds and ladies. And like I mentioned, established titles works with global charities like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to support global reforestation efforts. So click the link in the description or head over to Established Titles and take advantage of their massive Black Friday sale, as well as using code Sydney for 10% off your entire purchase. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, then you can probably remember women and girls in TV, film, and entertainment who didn't fit the girly girl mold. These girls typically were rough and tumble. They rejected stereotypical femininity in favor of sports cars, baggy clothes, rock and roll music, or whiny music. I see you, Avril Lavigne. I see you. You know, I'm not ashamed to admit, I really liked Avril Lavigne. I'm not sorry about it. She may have been an inspiration for a period of time where I looked like this. And of course there were equivalents on the male side, the frat boy and the jock versus the nerd and the bookworm. But the tomboy wasn't necessarily portrayed as a bad thing. Actually, most of the time, these girls and women were kind of badass. Movies like It Takes Two and The Parent Trap actually put these kind of girls side by side. Both films were centered around twin sisters, one being portrayed as the perfect proper princess, while the other was the spunky, sporty tomboy. But even before that, people were exposed to tomboys in classic literature, such as Jo in Little Women, Laura in Little House on the Prairie, and Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, tomboys existing in media might not seem all that important, especially given the fact that it was something of a cliche in 90s films in particular, especially teen girl dramas. But it actually represented something kind of great. Options. Options for girls. Be how you want. You want to wear dresses or a skirt? Go right ahead, have at it. You want to have the pink Hello Kitty backpack and buy lip smackers and show all your friends your super cool armbands? I actually don't remember if lip smackers were an Australian or American thing or both, so I'm just gonna show you a photo and you're just gonna pretend that you know what I'm talking about. Okay? Okay. But if the pink and the sparkles and the Hello Kitty stuff wasn't your thing, well, that was also perfectly fine as well. You know, you can put on your baggy pants and wear your etnies or your DC shoes and skateboard and eat the burgers and smash some beer with the boys. You could be any mix of the two. You could be one or the other, or you could be neither and settle somewhere perfectly in the middle ground as a neutral something or other. The point is, women and girls had the option.
Ray, this is 1987. Did you know that a girl can be whatever she wants to be?
I know, my mom's a plumber.
It seems like today, despite wokeness and so-called progressive liberal feminism, women and girls have fewer options than ever when it comes to being who they are and who they want to be. Of course, the hyper-feminine option still exists, although that's still the basis by which it seems plenty of people decide they must be transgender. They like nail polish, long hair, makeup, and so on, as if any of these things are actually what defines womanhood. Fun fact, they're not. And although being stereotypically feminine is all over the place, from entertainment to social media to magazines to other kinds of media, there doesn't seem to be too many other options for how to exist as a female. And like I've already mentioned, if you do something besides the hyper-feminine, then you are considered gender non-conforming, non-binary, or some version of transgender. Because apparently you can only look one specific way as a female. Something I actually find genuinely hilarious for no good reason other than the fact that it's just funny to me, is that all of these women who identify as something other than a woman all look like this. I teach in an elementary school. Anyway, the trouble is, if a woman or a girl isn't the girliest of girls, then the question becomes, are you really a boy? And if so, then something should probably be done about that. Although it's challenging to pinpoint when precisely it happened, the concept of the tomboy and the usage of it has become more or less obsolete. Actually, if I'm being dramatic, I'd say the death of the tomboy is a casualty of modern gender ideology. The concept of gender fluid and then transgenderism took precedence over a woman's perception of her own masculine behaviors. In 2017, an article titled "My Daughter Isn't Transgender, She's a Tomboy" was published by the New York Times. Of course, it was met with backlash. People accused the writer of suppressing her child's gender identity. The author explained how her daughter is often asked by doctors, teachers, and people who have known her for many years if she feels like or wants to be called a boy, simply because she doesn't fit the stereotypical mold of the girly girl. The mother writes that when people continue to question her child's gender identity and are skeptical of the child's response, the message they send is that a girl cannot look and act like her and still be a girl. Left alone, would boys really never wear pink? That's rhetorical. Pink was for decades considered a masculine color. Would girls naturally reject Matchbox cars? Of course not. But if they show preferences for these things, we label them. Somehow, as we have broadened our awareness of and support for gender nonconformity, we've narrowed what we think a boy and a girl can look like and do. You needn't look too far to find plenty other examples of this across the internet. Parents asking if their daughter is in fact a boy because she happens to like non-stereotypical girly things. Doctors and teachers helping children determine that they're in the wrong body based on their superficial interests.
I have a 5-year-old assigned male at birth kid, and she went to her dad's this weekend, who is, transphobic. So she has to change into shorts before she goes over there because she's not allowed to wear dresses. I told her it was time to go change for daddy's house, and she ran and got this cute little yellow dress with zebras all over it. She seemed really excited to show it to her dad. And she had a panic attack when I told her she had to put on shorts. She was afraid she wouldn't be able to find the right shorts.
This woman looks like exactly the kind of person that wants to trans their child.
So I sent her father a text and I was like, yo, she's having a panic attack because of this. And his response? Put bug in boy clothes. Obviously, I did not make the child change because she was upset enough as it was. She got home last night and almost immediately changed into a dress. She spent all weekend being told that she has to be a boy. And that she's not allowed to get tattoos.
Rylan started saying, I'm a boy. And at the time, we just thought it was cute. It was a phase. I thought maybe I would have a tomboy.
It was around 3 that we started to hear it, but around 4 years old was when it got very strong.
I'm sure what a lot of people can't believe about your story is that at 3 years old, a little girl can say, I'm a little boy.
This is 8-year-old Ryland today.
Over the fence.
After much research, counseling, and soul searching, Jeff and Hillary say they came to the inescapable conclusion that Ryland's gender identity did not match the sex on her birth certificate. So at age 5, Ryland began living as a boy.
Ryland remembers how he refused to wear clothes made for girls.
It was a little way of showing my mom and dad that I was a boy.
Okay, but seriously, this feels like a fever dream. Obviously, this side of the issue is very odd and concerning, but what I find especially weird is when people take literary or fictional female characters and insist because they're non-traditional in the way that they do things, they must be transgender or something other than a woman. Actually, this is pretty common with historical figures too, Joan of Arc being the most recent example. I actually saw an article recently that suggested Jo from Little Women is both trans and queer. For those who aren't familiar, Jo is a character who views herself as an equal to her male counterparts during a time when society probably did not. She's outspoken and unapologetic about not being interested in female stereotypes. This, like I said, according to activists and left-wing journalists, makes her queer or trans. Ugh. This myopic understanding of what makes a male and female is such a driving force behind modern gender ideology and hilariously reinforces the very ideas progressives are trying to dismantle. Modern gender activists have blockaded roads women and girls used to take to self-acceptance. Now they prefer to use labels like gender nonconformity. And when they say gender nonconformity, what they really mean is someone who either isn't blue all the time or pink all the time. In other words, an individual with a personality. It seems like today, personality and gender are interchangeable, with more young people, especially girls, believing their lack of interest in looking or acting like Kim Kardashian means they're some special other thing. This way of thinking is being reinforced all over the place. Now, the insistence that rejecting stereotypes associated with your sex means that you're in fact the opposite sex or no sex is finally being addressed by some governments around the world, because there are inevitable issues that arise from telling children, especially, that they're in the wrong body. The Department for Education and Skills in the UK instructed teachers not to tell girls who act tomboyish that their gender is male. The guideline states that children should not be led to believe that their preferences mean that their personalities or bodies are wrong. Which feels insane because, like, most of us know this by default, but modern gender ideology and its fanatics Scientists don't seem to agree. What's funny is that the efforts of these people to broaden the definition of gender and fight stereotypes has actually just done the opposite. They've trapped people in stereotypes and forced children into bodies that are not theirs. And they completely killed off the concept that women don't need to be girly girls in the process. You now have to get a micro fringe and pierce your septum and make TikToks. Join us. Am I TikToking correctly? Am I doing it right? Ah, my nose ring fell out. But this isn't just about women being forced into potentially transgenderism because they don't fit female stereotypes. This also has to do with the creation of new gender labels and trendy gendered stuff that didn't exist in the past because there wasn't any need for it. Simply because you didn't like stereotypical female things didn't make you a brand new gender, it just made you a female with your own interests.
Like my birth parents said that I was a girl, but they made a mistake.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah.
Right? So your mommy and I, we assumed that you were a girl. But then when did you set us straight?
Well, I was at least like 5 or 6.
But it started before that. You kept sending us signals, right? You'd say, sometimes I want to be a boy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to be a girl. Something just doesn't seem right here.
Well, I wasn't a girl or a boy.
Ah, so what are you?
Non-binary.
Right. And how do you feel about being non-binary?
Good.
Your mom and I have tried our best to support you and make that like something that's celebrated in our household. Have you ever spoken to your class about your gender?
Yeah.
What did you tell them?
I told them my pronouns and also my name.
I also want to make note of this, but I wasn't really sure where it fit in this video, so I'm just going to add it here. I know that there is a cohort of women and girls who do not identify as women and want to distance themselves from their sex because of things in their past, like trauma or abuse or some sort of sexual abuse, or even just feeling extremely uncomfortable with their female form and their female bodies. They're not really who I'm talking about in this video, but I just wanted to make mention of the fact that they are some of the people who fall into this category, but they are not the primary focus of what I am saying here. They are basically their own issue unto themselves. People seem to forget that the term tomboy was really just a catch-all for women and girls who just liked kind of atypical things. And while I've talked about this quite a lot in other videos about this topic, I think it bears repeating that many of the core tenets associated with being a tomboy or tomboyism are now diagnosable markers of gender dysphoria in girls, and basically the indication that, well, maybe you're in the wrong body. Funnily enough, our friend John Money, and he really pops up a lot, this guy, who I've also mentioned previously, and one of the founding fathers of gender ideology, claimed that assertive play and boyish behavior in girls was a sign of a fetal abnormality. Yes, you heard that correct. In his book, Men and Women, Boys and Girls, Money claimed that the most likely hypothesis to explain the various features of tomboyism in fetally masculinized genetic females is that their tomboyism is a sequel to a masculinized effect on the fetal brain. Now, obviously, gender ideology is not new, and John Money's book is from 1972. Times have changed. But this ideology still exists and continues to morph and adapt as time wears on, permeating major institutions and turning into something that has infected countless areas of life. The most ironic thing here is that progressives think that their ideas are in fact progressive, but the reality is that they haven't changed their conceptualization of this issue since the 60s and 70s. Progressives not actually being progressive? Crazy. I wonder if they know that. Probably not. For example, Money's claim that assertive or boyish traits in a girl were a sign that she was actually a boy has become so mainstreamed that it is platformed by lifestyle outlets. In September 2021, a mother wrote to Insider that her biologically female child came out to her at 2 years old. The mother writes that when she tried to enforce a girl bob on her 3-year-old female child, the child emphatically said no, she wanted a haircut similar to her older male cousin. I pressed on with the bob style. almost pushing to the point of tears, the mother says. Then I decided to follow my gut and give my child what I knew was needed. Pictures of little boy haircuts. Yes, that one. The joy and validation were evident on his face. So your kid wanted a short haircut, and now she'll be medicalized for the rest of her life. What is happening? Now, if all of this was a matter of identification, of some brand new spanking word coming in to replace tomboy, that still refers to a boyish girl, that would be one thing. But that's not what's happening here. This new conceptualization of gender that we have comes with some pretty negative consequences that the word tomboy did not have. The last number of years has shown us a tremendous increase in children seeking transition services all around the world. In 2018, there was a 4,000% increase in girls doing so in the UK, and similar numbers have come out in the United States. There are a multitude of reasons for this, but I believe one of them is because as our society has apparently opened up, our definitions of what makes a girl has become a lot narrower. Things that made you a tomboy 20 years ago now mean that you're in the wrong body and your non-conformity must be medicalized. It might sound extreme, but it seems that modern gender activists are actually forcing women and girls to choose between two equally crappy paths. Either be a pink dress-wearing bimbo or disassociate yourself from womanhood, inject yourself with experimental hormones, and cut your breasts off. It's one thing to not want to be a girly girl. It's another thing to medicalize and turn a tomboy into a lifelong big pharma customer. Those of us who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s had ways of expressing ourselves and the things that we liked, our hobbies, interests, clothing choices, without it meaning something more. Better yet, there were people we could actually emulate, women who didn't fit stereotypes who were still comfortably female. Today, celebrities who fall outside the so-called binary style themselves as non-binary or transgender, and very few of them express their femaleness in a way that sits outside the stereotypical norm. The result is that girls have nobody to look up to, and we're more boxed in than ever before. In the end, some could argue that the death of the tomboy has not been a net positive for society, and if anything, our new definitions and comprehension of this issue has just gotten a lot narrower for girls, which in turn does not assist us in any way, shape, or form. Tomboy, in days gone by, was just a word used to describe women and girls who were a little bit atypical, who maybe didn't fit the girly girl mold, and that was okay. And let's not forget that we had a lot more options. Options that simply, at least in my opinion, just don't exist today. Now, before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder to check out established titles using the link in the description. They're having a massive Black Friday sale, so go take advantage of that. Use my code Sydney for an additional 10% off your entire purchase. Now, I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Is the tomboy an important characteristic for women? Is it something that we should use to describe women again? Should it make a comeback? Do you think that it's outdated, that we don't need it, and in fact the new way that we think about women and girls is actually a lot better? What do you make of the stereotypes that we use to tell kids that they're trans or non-binary, or women and girls that they're trans and non-binary? What do you think of the concept of gender and sex as a general rule in society today? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so, just be respectful about it, and I will see you guys next time.